listener production.
I'm automotive commentator and journalist Greg Rust, and this is Rusty's Garage. I'm in New Zealand for this episode, about an hour from Queenstown at Highlands Motorsport Park. It's one of the newest race facilities in this part of the world, etched perfectly into the stunning South Island scenery. This is an enthusiast paradise with everything they need, apartments and properties where owners keep their cars for track days. There's a kart track and a brilliant museum. It's owned by Tony Quinn, the multi-millionaire business success story behind VIP Pet Foods and the revival of Darrell Confectionery. TQ can hold his own in the boardroom, but he's probably best described as a tough, no-nonsense boss who doesn't mind rolling his sleeves up and getting amongst it. Walking around here, you're likely to find him in shorts and boots rather than Hugo Boss. Never judge a book by its cover, as they say. Our chat is part business, part cars and racing. I know that many of you have your own businesses and often listen while you're on the road, so I hope you enjoy that side. TQ has never forgotten his upbringing in Aberdeen in Scotland, where he developed that trademark hard work ethic. His grandfather was a stowaway who went from Ireland and eventually ended up in America working for the automotive manufacturer Studebaker. It really was humble beginnings for the family.
Yeah, he did. Because it's hard to understand, but like in Ireland, they didn't get I think they got a shilling twice a year to go to the market. When the market came to, like the circus came to town or whatever, they would. Some of the stories that I could tell you are quite, horrific in modern day terms. They used to put straw inside their trousers, between their legs and their trousers, to keep themselves warm in the winter. I mean, I don't even know how you walk about like that. Mm-hmm. But some of the stories were, look, there's no doubt there was a bit of peppering of, Irish stories, but there was a fair degree of truth with the whole thing too. His grandfather or father was high up in the education department in Ireland, but in those days, a lot of the sons and stuff just got to work on the farm, or you went home to work, You weren't put for further education or university or anything like that. It was go home to the farm and work, So, but, he was a character, and he took us to Ireland for a holiday once when we were children and left us. Yeah, and he would come back once a week.
For weeks too, wasn't it?
Yeah, he left us. He went for 2 weeks, and this is the days without mobile phones or even communication, really. So he told our parents that he would be away for 2 weeks and he would be back for school to start, so we'd start school. Anyway, we went away. We were away for 6 weeks, and we would only see him once a week. He would leave us in the village, and the villagers would look after us. He'd come back once a week. I'll be honest, he was definitely out and about with the IRA or Sinn Féin and stuff. There was definitely stuff going on. Okay. We were totally ignorant to the whole thing, but on reflection, that's what was happening. And then, we went back to our parents, who didn't even know how to get hold of us. Mm-hmm. We'd been gone. School had started for 4 weeks, and they didn't know where we were. And I know, it's like, that's what happened. Mm. I don't know. I mean, I lived in a wooden caravan till I was 14 years old, like a gypsy caravan. I mean, it doesn't seem that long ago, but it was clean and tidy. People say to me, how did you do that? That must have been terrible. It wasn't. It was clean and tidy, and it was a roof, and it was a house, and we had a 12-inch black and white television with BBC One and BBC Two, and it was fine. I'm fine. My sisters are fine. It's all good.
One thing you and I wish I had your business skill. I don't share that with you, but one thing we do have in common is Aberdeen in Scotland. My grandfather grew up there. Mm-hmm. I've been there. That was home turf for you, mate. So when you're talking about the caravan and things like that in those early years, that's where you were.
Yeah, absolutely. Aberdeen, that's where I went to school, and that's where I grew up. That's where I met my wife, and started our family. I was in business there, was very successful there in business. And really how I got my start in business was not... My dad had a pet food company. My dad, God bless him, was a terrible businessman, a great guy, great visionary, had great energy, very creative. My mum was very conservative. She had to pay the wages. She didn't have enough money to pay the wages. So I grew up getting both sides. My mum had to have the money to pay the bills. My dad would spend the money before my mum got it. So it was an interesting environment, and I think it did me a lot of good. Because I understood that in business you had to make money, but you also had to keep going. You had to keep new ideas, keep the thing going, moving, with lots of momentum and encouragement. And you have to believe in what you're doing, even if everybody around you doesn't think you can do it.
And convey that.
Yeah, and you have to. It's like a good general. You have to convince the troops that we're doing the right thing. Let's charge at first dawn. I think every good general has fed his troops well and given them confidence and inspiration that we're going to win. And so I grew up in that environment. It was really good. But my start in business wasn't really through my dad at all. The family accountant who was in town recognized, he liked my style. He liked what I'd been doing. I was with a friend. I was joining cars, smashed cars together and selling them and doing all that stuff. I was all doing stuff.
And you were doubling your money on that.
Yeah. Look, it was the halcyon days. It was the good days.
None of them fell apart.
No, we did it right. I mean, Geordie, my mate, he was a head mechanic with Vauxhall, and no, we were doing it right. And can I tell you a wee story about that? So I had this BMW that my mate, who was a wealthy butcher's son, he crashed his new BMW, right? But he crashed it at the back, right? So the front was perfect, wrote it off. So I bought the BMW from him, right? So anyway, it was easy to find the rear of a BMW, right? Because most people crash at the front. Yeah. So happy days. So we bought this other car and joined it through the A-pillars and across the floor and stuff like that. Perfect job. I ran it for about 6 months. But when I come to sell it, and no problem, sell the car, it was a good car. But this guy said, I can't work it out. The guy I don't think he bought it, but he said, I can't work it out. It's a bit strange. He says the front lights are from a 1972, whatever it was, and the back lights are from a 1971. He says, I don't quite work out how it worked. And that's a true story. I don't think he bought it, but the next person didn't know, so we sold it to them. But so I was making money like that, but the accountant, who was a family accountant, had a customer that made signs called Albert Loftus. Mm-hmm. And I was in Gordon Lefevre, who took me under his wing, as well as a lot of other younger people in town, to foster them to. And anyway, he said, "Would you be interested in a sign business?" And I thought, well, yeah, I suppose so. He was one of those kind of guys, if he asked you a question that meant yes, you didn't say no. So I said, yeah. Anyway, I bought this sign business. Best thing I ever did, because I'd been living in the pet food world with my dad, mom, and all the staff and kennels and all that kind of stuff. Well, I bought this sign business, and I reckon I learnt everything there is to know about signs in 4 or 5 weeks. I think the apprenticeship was 5 years, but I reckon I could make a sign, do everything with a sign, sell a sign, put it up, everything within bloody 4 or 5 weeks. And that business, when I bought it, had 2 guys working on the floor and a lady in the office, and she was leaving because what happened was Albert Loftus died, had a heart attack, taking off his overalls to go home for lunch. And so anyway, I bought it, and within 2 years, it was the biggest in Scotland. It was massive growth with the oil exploration and production and North Sea oil. It was fantastic. But it got to the point, I had 27 sign makers and 5 people in the office. And you try and keep 27 sign makers going with work. And this is in the days before emails and all that stuff. So you had to do contracts and tenders and stuff, and you were never quite sure what was coming in. And, the mail, back in the days, you got actual letters and everything through the mail. And some days you would, you'd have nothing in the job box, nothing to do. And the next morning you would get 10 jobs come in. It was, it's all the pressures of being in business and stuff like that, but I was making money. Something that my dad had never really mastered. He was good at spending his money, but he could never actually make it and be, consistent, if you like. So I had a new Fiat, he had an old bloody Rover or some bloody thing.
What did you have? Was a 131?
131S, it was.
Tell us more about that. What was it?
No, it's silver. Yeah. It was silver. Brand new car, yeah. And, when I see them now, I think, geez, what an ugly car. But it's very square. But, no, it was good. And, obviously met Christina and started a family. But how I came to Australia I find it quite interesting. Our main electrician that did all the neon work in the business was a staunch union advocate member. And I saw him sitting in a lay-by when I was coming back. And, we're busy. So when he got back into the shop, I said, mate, Jim was his name. Jim, why were you sitting in a lay-by when you could have been back here helping us out? No, I'm due such and such minutes every hour or something. And I totted them up. And I thought, geez, really? And the business was getting big enough that, you kind of lose control. Not lose control, but you lose that direct deal with the guys, and it becomes less of a family. And there's factions within the factory that start developing, and I was a bit sick of it, to be honest. And a guy from Chevron came in, and he was a good customer, and I got on well with him. And I says, mate, what are you doing? What are you up to? Because where are you going next? Because I want to be where you guys are going next. And he said, all the talk is Perth, Western Australia. That's where we're heading next, to do the West Australian oil basin thing. And I said, right. And I always liked Australia. Like, how you do school projects and stuff. And geography was quite a strong subject of mine. And I liked Australia. It was a part of the Commonwealth, and you do these projects about the Australian stuff and that. And, I thought, fucking Australia, how good would that be? So this is true. I went home to Christina and said, hey, we're going to Perth.
Like that?
Yes, this is true. And she was pregnant at the time. And she said, what, Perth in Scotland? Because there's a Perth in Scotland. I said, no, Perth, West Australia. And she said, what, for a holiday? I said, no, we're going to go and live there. We're going to create a new life in Australia. And to be, there's a few things happening. I thought I was invincible. I thought, how cool is this? Like, business is easy. Yeah. I'm making money. Customers are coming in. It's easy, right? Money in the bank. I was making more money than Maggie Thatcher was getting paid. And I thought, how could that be possible? She's running the country, dealing with all the miners and the problems and everything else. And here I am making signs up in Aberdeen, making much more than Maggie Thatcher's making. It's stupid things, eh? Anyway.
So you clearly thought, I can take the same thing and transplant it at the opposite end of the earth. Is that what you were going to do?
Yeah, so this story is going to get bigger and bigger, but absolutely, that's what I thought. Because this is 1979, 1980. Back in those days, everybody in the UK thought that Australia was 20 years behind. Yeah. That was the way it was. Yeah. You'd go out to Australia and there would be corrugated iron fences and houses and older cars and all that kind of stuff. And it was just, that was the word. That was how it was. Now, remember, no Google, no Wi-Fi, no information like that. If you wanted information, go to the library and sit down and read a book. I didn't have time for that. So I'm saying, nah, after set, I'll be 5 years ahead of everybody else, or 20 years ahead, but at least 5. I'll be ready for the boys coming with the oil exploration, because there's a difference. Oil exploration is much more lucrative than oil production. Yeah, so I'm interested in the exploration bit. So Christina, the other story is I picked up the phoned, I can't even remember the name of the company in Glasgow that was like the second or the next biggest, or just as big sign company in Glasgow, and said, hey, I'm going to sell this business. Are you interested? They jumped in the car, drove up, which takes about 2.5 hours, drove up. Within half an hour, we'd done the deal, and I sold the business and property and everything. And so again, home to Christina, right? The flights, because we flew when she was 7 months pregnant, on the last day that she could fly. In those days, you couldn't fly past 7 months pregnant. I don't know what it is now, but so we flew on the last day that she could, arrived in Perth at midnight, right? And took a taxi to the hotel. But when I got to the airport, because we had two little kids and Christina's pregnant with a third, and when I arrived at the airport, there's all these pretty fancy signs. And I'm thinking, because it's an international airport, they must import them from America, or do you know what I mean? Yes. From England maybe, I don't know. But they were pretty good quality modern signs, and I'm thinking, no, okay, fine. So I get to the Flag Motel in Belmont, and Christina puts the kids to bed. And in those days, flying with a family, stopping off in Bombay, and they open the doors and the stench comes in, and it's pissing rain, and it's, it was not rough or anything, but it was what it was. Anyway, she put the kids to bed, and I did what every good businessman does when they arrive in a new town or new city or new country. You grab the Yellow Pages. And the Yellow Pages were such a Bible for business. You had to be in the Yellow Pages or you're buggered. So grab the Yellow Pages, and first thing I do is look up, it's a funny kind of story, but because I was a Ford Escort guy in Scotland, I had a couple of Ford Escorts and I liked them. I'm flicking through the Yellow Pages, and there's these pages and pages of escorts, but they were women escorts.
Not Mark II's or...
No, and it's like, whoa, I've never seen that. Like, that didn't happen in Scotland, Anyway, I got to signs. Oh my God. There was... So in Scotland, I had half a page, and I was the king, right? King me, I was that. King Loftus. And there would have been 12 pages of half pages, sign companies. There was, in the company that I went to see, was a company called Project Neon. And they had in one of their claims, like, built up letters and engraving and all that, computer cut lettering. I didn't even know what that was. I had no idea what that meant.
This is not due diligence. This is realisation.
This is the moment before you start crying, when the kids are in bed and the wife's in bed. So I went to see Project Neon. They were 5 years ahead of what we were. Amazing. Perth, generally speaking, is a pretty progressive town in WA, and they were well ahead of Scotland. Way ahead. Anyway, there was 4 years of my life there. I mean, I ended up mowing lawns, which I enjoyed, but there was no real future in. But I cried in that first 6 months being in Perth. I cried quite a lot, and I think during that stay in Perth, I think if it was today and we had medical intervention, I am pretty sure that I would have been depressed. I think there was moments of, what have I done?
So how did you dig yourself out of that then?
Yeah, well, I don't know, but I guess I just boxed on. And there's a lot of... You see, in Scotland, you trust somebody. That's the way you're brought up. If somebody says, I'll sell you my guitar for $10, £10, well, you go on Sunday and you give them £10 and they give them the guitar. Whereas in Perth at that time, if you said, I'll give you $10 for your guitar, they'd say, oh yeah, okay. You go back on Sunday with $10 and they'd say, no, I sold it for 12 or whatever. And I don't want to... there was a lot of people floating about Perth that were unaccountable for a lot of things. And this was in the days when Alan Bond was around, right? And you were reading the paper, and he was doing billions and millions, and he was a sign writer too, see? So I'm going, well, back. So to recap, the oil never came. The oil guys never came to Perth because there was other places, easier places, better. I think they do have lots of oil there, but they just cap the wells and save it for a rainy day. So anyway, they never came. So I was alone again, you know, so I did a few different things. But years later, when I was in Australia, I got an email. I'm going forwards 30 years now, and I'll come back a bit, but 30 years on, I got an email from somebody, Michelle or something, saying that Alan Bond would like to have a meeting with you. And you know, like in my position at that time, you got a lot of correspondence from people that wanted to pick your brains, or I've got a great idea, you know, I want you to invest in it and all that stuff. So I was very cheeky. I went back and said, yeah, sure, if it's the Alan Bond that won the America's Cup in 1983, happy days. If not, I'm sorry, I'm too busy. Well, yes, it's the Alan Bond that won America's Cup in 1980. Now, this guy had been in prison and all sorts of things and stuff. And I said, what does he want to talk about, you know? He's got a business in America that he wants to talk to you about. I said, licorice business. Yeah. So by this time I had Darryl Lee. And I said, oh, sure, that would be great. Well, I can tell you, it was scheduled for half an hour. 2.5 hours later, we're still chewing the fat. I found him an absolute delight, but I was so glad that I knew his history, because if I hadn't, I'm sure I would have bought a tin mine in Nicaragua or whatever, Mozambique or something. He would have sold me something. Wow. He was the best salesman I've ever come across. And he was 72 or 74 at that time. Yeah, he was a character. I loved it. And I asked him, I said, how did you get on when you were in prison? You know, like, how did that work, you know? He said, business as usual. No problem. And he meant it. Like, he was cool. And do you remember why he went into prison? Amnesia. He couldn't quite remember. And I'd arranged with him to go and visit his business in America, but I wasn't to tell his general manager that I'd had a meeting with him and stuff like that. And I said, yeah, okay, well, I won't say anything like that. Then I won't mention that we've had this meeting. And he said, what meeting? He was as sharp as. But I found him a delight.
Research has shown that the fastest car on the planet and the one you can drive the hardest is a hire car, because you know you don't have to pay for the servicing.
So go back to Perth again. I'm mowing lawns, and I was depressed. I'm sure this wasn't for me, you know, Perth. I didn't like it. The summer came and it was 40 degrees for 3 weeks and all that stuff. I didn't like it. I didn't do badly there, but I didn't do well at all. Mm-hmm. And what I was doing, I was mowing lawns for people, and there was a fair amount of Kiwis there. Then I got talking to them and stuff, and I quite liked the Kiwis. I thought, these are a good bunch of people, you know. They were all over there for the mines and stuff like that. And I said to Christina, we've got to go somewhere. This is not for me. Perth is not for me. I didn't travel to the East Coast. Right? Strange, but I didn't. I just thought Australia was Perth. Like, yes, it's all the same. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I said, we need to go either New Zealand, South Africa, Canada. I need to get out of here, or maybe back to Scotland. And going back to Scotland, although you'd have your tail between your legs and stuff like that, at least I knew the whole deal, right? So I took a trip back to Scotland. And just to make sure that what we're going to do. I went there 3 days later, I was only there for a week, and I very quickly decided, no, we're not doing that. We're not going back there. That's just not right. Australia and that Southern Hemisphere thing is much better for the children. a much better life, you know. An ordinary guy can have a house and a boat and go on holiday and travel a bit, and it's a good life for a working guy, you know. It's much better than Scotland. So, okay, well, off we go to New Zealand. And, I'll tell you the truth. I arrived in New Zealand and I didn't really like it. I thought, whoa. First shop we went to was Three Guys, which is now Pack and Save. And in those days, you had to, with a felt pen, you had to write the price on the packet and take it to the counter. It was like, honestly, it was like stepping back 10 years or whatever. It was whoa, far out. But I loved the country, and I think I took 8 hours of green video, just because I'd been in Perth for 4 years and everything's kind of dry-ish. Cows, oh, look at these cows, look at these sheep, and we're taking videos of stuff. And anyway, long story short, the house in Perth sold when we were in New Zealand. So it was like, far out, what do we do now? So we came to New Zealand, both quite reluctantly, Christina and I. There wasn't... Years later, we agreed with each other. You know, I didn't really like it, and she said, I didn't really like it. But what happened when we came to New Zealand? It was like a breath of fresh air. I talked to a few people, and we got back into the swing of things and got back into business. And it started a fantastic 9-year journey. The first year in Dargaville, met some lovely people, like really Kiwis I love Kiwis, good people. And some lovely people. Got going with, a lot less money than I had. And just boxed on and had some... I remember the first Christmas that we had in New Zealand, we'd sold a lot of product, right? It was drums of tallow that we'd sold. We'd set up this little business called Fat Man, picking up waste fat from chip shops and stuff. That's like stuff you wouldn't do now, but that's what we did. And anyway...
What did you say when you were younger? There's money in shite. Is that what you used to say?
Well, there still is.
Yeah.
There's actually money in everything. You've just got to find it. That's the trick. You got to find it. I mean, there's gold out in those hills, but, you got to find it.
Yeah.
But anyway, the first Christmas we had, I got the check for our first lot, which was $4,000, right, for our first sale. And because in New Zealand, they pay you on the 20th of the month following, right? So we gave them the invoice in November. They paid on the 20th of December, right? Now, I hadn't got Christina anything for her Christmas because, it gets like that. Complacency sets in pretty quickly. Anyway, I hadn't got anything. Well, I got this check in the mail. I thought, great. So I wrapped up in a little wee parcel and I gave it to Christina on Christmas Day and said, it's something small, but it's worth a lot of money. And she thought it's a ring or something. Because she's saying, why did you waste money on a ring? Like, we don't need a ring. And she opened it up and it was a check, first check to Fat Man in New Zealand. And we banked it and away we went. And, in my 9 years of New Zealand, I struck up many, many good friendships with many people because I was a contributor and I delivered on my promise, which is one of the main things that you have to do in business. And anyway, it was a great journey. Eventually got back into pet food, forced, may I say. And look, there's a whole other backstory to all this, but I'm not going to get into that unless you want me to. But there's a whole lot of experiences in there that were golden, just golden. But anyway, got back into pet food. And I couldn't fucking understand how my dad couldn't make money making pet food because I was away. I was off and running in New Zealand. And within like 4 years in New Zealand, I had this, it was a very, very good and profitable pet food company up in the north. And I was flying and we did all sorts of things. We also had a chip business that we sold to Mr. Chips. And it was just a fantastic journey. To a point where I thought about going into local politics because I thought...
Tony Quinn?
Yeah,
at the Beehive in New Zealand?
No, maybe
just
not
local
Beehive.
stuff.
Just local stuff because I was annoyed at the time that it took to do stuff that was so obvious. Do you know, I think in your mid-30s, you get to that point, you think, why can't we just do that? Why can't we have a hit squad that go about fixing things for people? Why do we have to have a big discussion about things? Just make it happen, yeah. So anyway, but thankfully I didn't into that. And we got the opportunity through Big Fresh in Auckland. So we used to sell pet food to Big Fresh in Auckland, and a guy called Roger Willoughby was the general buyer, and he said, look, we're going to open up in Australia. I'd like you to think about exporting your product to Australia. I want you to go to Sydney and have a look at our store there that's just opened, see what you think. So, yeah, perfect. So we hadn't been on holiday forever, so we boarded the kids out with friends, and me and Christina went to Sydney, and this is in the 90s, I think, 94. We went to King's Cross and stayed in King's Cross because here we are from Whangarei in New Zealand, going to the Big Smoke. We thought, let's go to King's Cross, we'll stay there. Well, geez, we'd never seen any of that stuff where we came from, not even in Scotland. So it was a real eye-opener, and I loved Sydney. I loved it. I thought, how cool. You do the multiplying in your head. You think, how many people are here? Oh, I can do this. And we went to the shop, Big Fresh in Leichhardt it was, and a pack and save in Whangarei would have, 8 tills with 4 people deep, These guys had 16 tills with 16 people deep. It was just bedlam. And I thought, my God, I can make money here. So I said to Christina, I want to come here. I want to do this Australian thing. I want to make it here. I don't want to send it from New Zealand. That's not going to work long term. I want to do it. And she said, one last time. Yeah, because they get settled and the kids at school and everything else. And she says, we'll do it one more time, one last time. But, I said, yeah, we have to go to the Gold Coast because my parents had ended up on the Gold Coast. And at that age in your career with teenage kids and stuff, you need help. Yep. You need grandparents, right? You need all that stuff. And she said, as long as we go to the Gold Coast, that's fine. And I didn't want to go to the Gold Coast because it's the Gold Coast, you go there for holiday, not for business. But anyway, it was the best thing that she ever said to me. It was the best ultimatum that she ever gave me. And the story of VIP is well documented, and basically we started with nothing. 21 years later, sold it for 410 million.
How many staff did you have at the end?
850 or 950. But that was across the chocolate thing as well, the Dadalee thing as well. But just on the pet food, it had 5 factories going 24 hours a day, 5 days a week. And one of the things that I'm not really credited for, and I don't mind, as well as the pet food, kangaroo meat was quite a big ingredient in pet food. And when we entered the kangaroo business in the bush, it was a terrible state. It was an awful business, full of rogues and rascals and just Irishmen, it must have been. No. And what me and my general manager Rex Devantier did was we cleaned up that whole business. And we actually turned it into a human consumption business that used the scraps for pet food. And that was a successful business. My dad used to say that everything you touch turns to gold. You've got the Midas touch. And, not that I'm humbled by that, and I don't think that's really accurate because there has been a couple of failures. But there's no doubt that the old saying, the harder you work, the more successful you become, has some merit and should be given some thought. People ask me, where should I invest or what should I do and stuff. I don't know. I don't have the answer. I don't have a pink fairy wand that I wave about anywhere. I just say, and I think Jamie Winkup's grandfather told him, to win, you have to work harder and longer than your opposition. And it's as simple as that. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole heap of other stuff. So, I don't want to drive this, but, business is business, and I find it quite easy, to be perfectly honest. You have to surround yourself with good people if you're going to employ people. Do not waste your life and your time with people that can't do it and can't keep up. You're just killing yourself and you'll fail. So get good people around you. There are 3 things that I can pass on to people about business. I call them the 3 pillars, but I'm sure you can call them whatever you like. The first thing that is important is your brand, right?
You are big on that, aren't you?
I'm big on brand because it's a brand that people want to buy, and it's a brand that other businesses will want to buy, right? They won't want to buy if you're just ABC cleaners. Do you know what I mean? Oh, well, maybe they will, but you've got to put some thought into that, and it needs to be happening in the beginning because that's what you can't really change, right? So your brand is very, very important. The next very, very important thing is there's a term in the retail trade called DIFOT, which is deliver in full on time. Now, if a customer orders something and you accept the order, you've got to fulfill it, and it's got to be on time. Otherwise, they can't run their business properly. So the way I find it easy to compete in Australia, so in New Zealand when I was in business, DIFOT wasn't really talked about because everybody did it. Kiwis are pretty competitive people and pretty good at their doers, So when I went to Aussie, the biggest thing I found was that Australian businesses of any size spent half their time thinking up an excuse why they didn't manage to deliver whatever they promised. And for me, it was easy because if I said I was going to do something, I did it. And then your customers they rely on you. They don't ask what price or whatever, so long as it's value. And that's the second pillar. So brand, DIFOT, or deliver what you promise. Thirdly, and this is just as important because a lot of people get this wrong too, you've got to make margin. You've got to understand your cost, you've got to understand your overheads, you've got to understand the whole thing, and you've got to be not embarrassed at making a profit.
You say in the book 0 to 60, which I love, by the way, you have a thing about 2 + 2 = 7, don't you? Just explain that.
So I love it. And it was something that because quite often, some of my best thoughts and decisions came when I was wearing gumboots. Honestly, like when you take your gumboots off and put your shoes on and the shirt and tie, you start talking too much, not thinking and reacting quickly. So the 2 + 2 = 7 comes from, we all go to school and we all get taught by people, and this is not a stab at teachers, but we all get taught by teachers who have never actually left school, mainly, right? So they've never really been in the big wide world. They've looked after, they get bloody 12 weeks holidays a year. And I can imagine people going, that's bullshit, blah, blah, blah. But some of my best friends are teachers, and we discuss it, or principals, we discuss it a bit, right? Because the poor other guys are out there working, they're only getting 2 or 3 or 4 weeks a year off. Teachers have a pretty good gig, in my opinion. Anyway, so 2 + 2 = 4. We all know that. That's what they teach us. And it's true. Nothing wrong. Arithmetically, it's absolutely accurate. Perfect. But in real life, I say that if you take all of your costs and overheads and stuff in your business, and it's 2 + 2 = 4, and this is where the third thing comes in, the margin, a lot of people will sell their services or think they're free services or whatever, and they'll sell it for 4.
You go bankrupt.
2 + 2, so you go bankrupt. And the worst thing about going bankrupt is that you'll take other people with you, and that's not right. That's not good. So 2 + 2 = 5, right? That just means that you're going to go bankrupt slowly. Because in business there are things that you don't take account of, tax, workers' compensation, insurance claims, whatever it is. There are things that you do not foresee, nobody sees coming. So you need to have a fair old buffer there. And you take the bushfires in Australia, you take all these things that come and just, fuck, who saw that coming? So 2 + 2 = 5, you're just going to go bankrupt slower. Now 2 + 2 = 6, that's fine. You're going to have a nice detached house. The kids are going to go to private school. You're going to go on holiday to Fiji once a year or Hawaii in a special year. You're going to probably drive a Volvo or a Mercedes or something, and you're going to have, and your mother will be very proud of you, right? You'll be good. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But the real trick in business, 2 + 2 = 8, right? Give your customer a discount because everybody wants a deal. Sell it for 7.
Make them feel good.
Make them feel good. They're happy and you're making profit. And that's what 2 + 2 = 7 really means. It's obviously not correct, but it's the philosophy of, when you're in business, you need to double whatever it costs you, and then if you've got a bit of slack, you can build your business.
Before we move to cars, because that's been the parallel for you between business and cars and motorsport right throughout your life, for that matter, I want to just deal with the Darrell Lea chapter for a second, if I can. Is it true? I can recall Julia Gillard getting on national television and, we need to save this great Aussie company, and they were had such great history in the confectionery business in Australia. Maybe the model was old, as you discovered, but that was a factor. I think did one of your sons get on the phone and say, "Dad, I think we can do something here"? And was it true that your mum said, "Where am I going to get my peanut brittle"? Or is that a fictitious story?
No, she didn't say peanut brittle.
Was it?
But what happened was, you're quite right. Clark, actually, who was in limbo, had done his job in the pet food land. He was a dry food guy, done a good job in Dubbo, kind of looking for something else to do. Clark had said, this Darrell Lea thing might be worth looking at. And Rex, my GM, said to me, "We should have a look at Darrell Lea." I said, "No way. We're not going to fix a broken business that other people have tried fixing. And, it's too hard. I don't want to do that. We've got better things to do." And you're right that Julia Gillard went on TV. And after that, my mum phoned me up and said, "Oh, Tony, Darrell Lea's gone into bankrupt," or whatever she said. I said, "Yeah, I know." And she said, you should buy that. I said, "Mum, it's buggered. It's a big job." And she says, "Oh, you would easy manage that. That would be right up your street. You'd enjoy that and stuff." And I don't know whether Clark had phoned her up and teed her up or something. Anyway, the truth is, I'm thinking, "Nah, I'm not doing that." So I went in the next day and I said to Rex, "Mate, let's have a look at Darrell Lea." And we went down and had a look at it. It was an absolute shambles. It was, to be honest, a disgrace that a family had let it go. Like, that business had supplied the Lea family with, if it wasn't 17, it was 27 properties in Sydney. The business needed $11 million to right it, to fix it. The family didn't want to put any money into it because they were, didn't want to risk it, because they'd been used to money coming out of the business, not going into the business. And the management team that they had were pretty buggered, really.
And yet the product it's good.
The product was good, but wasn't good enough.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, what they were doing, they were selling the product that they made fundamentally through their own stores.
Yep.
And when you sell stuff through your own stores, you really don't have to compete, because you can put it where you like and you can price it however you like, and you don't really have to compete with anybody on the shelf beside you, right? So the punter that goes into the shop, they have to buy something from the shop, basically. So it's a bit of a free license to do what you like. And that's why outlet shops have sprouted and pop factory shops, because you get rid of the shit that you can't sell, you can't compete with. Not the shit, but you get rid of the product that you can't compete with. So the first thing we did, we said we're not taking on any of the retail shops. They're gone. There was only 1 out of 65 making a profit. And when I say profit, it was making $100,000 a year. Like, that's not a profit. So we shut all of those. The product count went from 700 and whatever to 85. The staff went from 700 or 500 and something to 85. 85 being the magic number. There is no magic number, but that was the numbers. And we set about writing the business. And I can tell you that within 3 months, the business was losing $11 million a year. And within 3 months, it was making money.
Back in the black?
Yeah, back in the black.
That's amazing.
I didn't think so, and I still don't think so. It was just good strategy and positive direction, and this is what we're doing. This is what will fix it. And I guess what helped me was that I didn't have any love of chocolate rock or whatever it was. I didn't care. The product had to be good enough to compete, and it had to have a good enough margin in order for us to make it. Because a lot of the products they were making, there was negative margin. So the next thing I did was I went to the retailers. Well, at the beginning of that, when I shut the retail shops, I personally, along with my sales guys, went to the retailers and said, we're going to shut all these shops. Do you want to stock Daddley on your shelves? Knowing full well that they would like a piece of that Daddley business, like sales. And each and every one of them said, yes, that's what we would like to do. And we got a good, but you know, the thing that really did it was because they knew I was connected or owned VIP Pet Foods, and VIP Pet Foods had a default rate of 98%, which is like most people struggle to get to 92, 95, we had an average score of 98%, and the supermarket said, yes, we will give you space because we know that you won't run us out of stock.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, and then, I don't know, 5 years later or 4 years, whatever, I'm not good with that time stuff. Because I don't split my weeks with weekends. It's just one rolls into the next. And sold it for 200 million, and I still have a share in it and stuff like that. But you know, another interesting story, I know you want to talk about Daddley. Daddley's a great story. I still have 10%, and I still go and see what the guys are doing every so often. Now, as an ex-owner, you think, I don't really think you should be doing that. But do you know what? They're doing a good job. And if you stand back and look, it's fine. You know, perhaps it's not what I would have done, but the job that they're doing is perfect. So as an investor, I'm happy. But just when I sold VIP, right, I sold it for 410 million. It cost me startup costs and stuff, It was good. Paid an awful lot of tax, it was crazy. The government wins in all of these deals, right? They're the ones that really win. Anyway, so I sold it for 410, but I kept 10% of it, right? Just because my theory there is, if you've got a good business, a bona fide good business, and somebody wants to buy it, if you can, keep 10%. If they're a good operator, keep 10%, because it's a business that you know, and you know the ins and outs and the ups and downs. And if it's a good business, they'll do the work for you and grow the value, right? So 10% I kept of VIP Pet Foods, and they had all sorts of grand schemes, and off it went. 2 years later, Chris Hadley phoned me up and said, hey, TQ, I think we could sell this thing. He says, it's not ready to be sold, but I think we can sell it. And I said, really? I said, good on you. You don't think you should keep it and get another year under the belt because it's got some good things happening? No. It's the Chinese / American conglomerate syndicate. I said, okay, fine. He says, the only thing is, you're going to have to help me sell it because the Chinese want to talk to the original owner. And, it's the Chinese way, I think. Anyway, I said, yeah, no problem, mate. Yeah, no issue whatsoever. Well, whatever's good for the cause, I'm in. I said, what's the deal? Because what they'd done is they'd paid 400 million for it. They'd spent 100 million on acquisitions. The turnover had gone up 100 million, but the profit remained the same, which is what big companies do. That's how they work. Anyway, he said, I reckon we can get 1.2 billion. I says, no. I says, mate, no way. I says, that's a waste of time. No, he says, I think we can do it. I said, you're joking. Anyway, but another few weeks went by. It was October. So the deal was I had to go down and spend an afternoon with this Chinese group, the round table sort of thing. Well, I'm here to tell you that was probably one of the worst afternoons. I enjoyed it for the first hour. But the second hour, when they went over the same things again, I was losing focus. The third hour, when they went over the same things again, and then the next half hour, when they tried to go over the same things again, I sort of cut it short. I was getting short at this stage and saying, hey, I've got to go, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I left the room, I left the meeting, and I phoned Chris the next day. I said, mate, that was terrible. That was an awful afternoon I spent. He says, I know. He says, I spent 5.5 hours the day before. I said, you didn't want to tell me? He says, no, I couldn't tell you. Anyway, here's the story. We sold it for $1 billion.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Second roll of the dice.
So that 40 million investment became 100 within 2 years, and that was the easiest money I ever made. Because I didn't have much to do with it when it was under their stewardship and stuff. So I don't know. There's an old saying, the first million's the hardest one to make and the rest come easier. And I guess that's true. So during that time, I had used motorsport to promote my brands, right? Because
and it worked for you, didn't it?
It worked marvelously for me, because I stayed in there. I went, I sort of stayed, hung around, and I was lucky to be involved in Shane's return to V8s. That was a lucky move. Yeah, Shane. And then for Will Davidson, John Webb to win Bathurst with Shane right behind them. And I wasn't on the phone to Shane at the time, said stay behind. But for them to win Bathurst, I thought was a great exit for the V8 thing for me. Yeah, so look, motorsport in business for me, whilst, people would say that, it's for personal enjoyment. It's actually not. I've used it for the businesses that I've got, and I've done very, very well out of the businesses that I've had.
Is there any truth to the story that one of the marketing bosses of a big Australian grocery company wanted you to do a traditional TV advertisement? You wanted to stick with motorsport. You figured out what state this bloke lived in, and you bought a limited campaign in that state to sort of appease him, but kept going with motorsport. Is that what you did?
Yeah, well, there was lots of things, and yes, that's true. And I used to find out where the buyers would live, and I would put a billboard up on their way home or to work, because they apply a lot of pressure to spend your money to build their business. That's how it works. And it's a joint thing, but it's a kind of win in small letters for you and a massive win big letters for them. That's how their model works. But yes, no, it wouldn't be. I didn't do it once. I probably did it 3 or 4 times, where I would find out where the buyer lived and then work out that he would see that billboard on his way to work, or his wife or somebody would, he would see it, and then tell him that we had a national campaign going on. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and the same with television and stuff like that. Although television never really worked. So I remember spending $117,000, which was a lot of money in those days, with television in Victoria, Target Victoria, because that's where the buyer of Coles was that was saying you need to spend money on television. So I spent 117 grand in Victoria, and you know what? I never saw the advert. I don't live in Victoria. Nobody ever said to me, "Oh, I saw your ad on TV," right? So, and almost concurrently, not concurrent, but a bit after that, a month after that, Peter Fitzgerald, who used to run a Porsche against Jim and stuff, Porsche Cup, he was always stuck for funds, He was the proverbial, he was an accountant, and I could never work out how he was even in motorsport. Anyway, I decided to sponsor Fitzy. 2 things happened, I can tell you. I sponsored Fitzy, and he, for Bathurst and Indy, it was 10 grand or something for his bonnet or the front of his car. And at Bathurst and Indy, the cameras are quite often up, or were quite often up high. So, and Fitzy won Bathurst and he won Indy. And after Bathurst, I would have had, on the Monday, I would have had 10, 12 phone calls from people, or you didn't phone me up to tell me, but if I'd been on the phone buying beef or something, they'd say, "Oh, I saw your car winning Bathurst the other day," and stuff. And I thought to myself, wow, this is much better for branding than just having a TVC, a normal TVC. So that's, and the other golden bit was at Canberra street race. You remember them?
Yes, I do. Supercars.
Yes, Cameron McLean,
Yes.
right? He was our privateer, and we sponsored his bonnet, and I think it was $7,000. Jamie Blakey was his manager or whatever, and I was reluctant. Nah. Anyway, I finally did it, and as luck would have it, I'm pretty sure they did the top 15 shootout. And Cameron was 15th, right? So he just snuck in. He was the first car on the track, and God bless him, Barry Sheen was commentating, right? Yeah. And Barry, they were talking up this Cameron. He's a privateer, and he's in the 15. And well, the first turn at Canberra was a hard right, I think. Well, Cameron didn't make it, smacked into the wall on the left-hand side, bent the front wheel, but carried on. But he carried on at snail's pace. And of course, being television and stuff, they had to talk about Cameron and his new sponsor on the front, VIP Pet Foods. It was golden. It was, so Jim Richards will always tell you can have as much talent as you like, but you need a fair bit of luck as well. And business is like that too. You can have a good idea, great product, great everything, but you need a bit of luck too. I mean, that doesn't harm to have a bit of luck, good luck.
That's the end of part 1 of my chat with Tony Quinn. Make sure you check out part 2, where he gets deeper into the passion for cars and racing. From Targa Tasmania to some seriously cool and very rare wheels in the collection. Rusty's Garage is written and presented by me, Greg Rust. Series producer and editor is Alex Mitchell. Audio production by Darcy Thompson.
Listener.